All right, this is Founder Laerun, and I am here with mapper Moepsii, a cartographer from our community for Fantasy Grounds College. He just made a map and released it to the public here in the community for Fantasy Grounds College. I will leave the links for those later in the description. But for now, I have Moepsii in the chat, and I'm going to show you how to load that up and add some line of sight to it. I'm using this for practice. I really didn't plan this session, but I think I need to practice because we're going to be teaching this coming up. So let's use this somewhat as a promo to our new class that we're going to work on. We're still working on the curriculum, and as Unity updates and becomes better and more optimized, some of the things that we're going to do or show or even teach will end up becoming different as time goes on. So if you're watching this in the future, today is December 8th, 2020. By the time you look at this, things might be a little different, but for the most part, it should be similar. The theme I'm using today is a custom theme on OBS. I'm using the latest and greatest version of Fantasy Grounds Unity. And I'm going to show you how to import the map and how to use it and get it set up for line of sight. And then I'll start actually working on the map. So first of all, Moepsii's one of our community members. He's been with us for a few years, or at least a couple years. He does his own maps. He has his own Etsy website. I'll put that also in the description later. He prices his maps fairly well, so if you are interested in getting more, they're generally fairly priced really well. That means they're not super expensive, and they're fairly good quality, and I think that his style and technique has improved since I've met him. So hopefully we'll get to interact with him a little bit, and we'll get the map going here. So first things first, I have a brand new session in Fantasy Grounds. I don't have a whole lot of extensions. I have the theme for this dungeon background, and then I have a font extension which makes fonts a little bit bigger. But other than that, you don't really need anything when you're working with line of sight. The next thing is your assets library, which is on the far right. It's a round button. I'm going to open this up. And when you see this up here, this assets, you're going to notice that there's 4 different tags up here. When you open this window, the default is tokens. So if you are working with tokens, that's great. If not, you need to click over on images. So in this case, we are working with images. Now, once we're here, I'm going to import the map that comes from Moepsii. But if you buy a module that comes from an official source, more than likely it's already loaded in here. You just have to find the campaign folder. In this case, I'm going to be basically making our own campaign folder. So I want to click on this folder button down below. And I don't know if you're able to see my folder, but the path that opened up was app data, roaming, Smiteworks, Fantasy Grounds, campaigns, Moepsii's maps, that's what I called this session, and then images. So what I'm going to do is drag the map from my downloads folder into that folder so that it'll be available for me in Fantasy Grounds. Now this is being imported at the campaign level. If you want the same map to be available in all of your sessions, you have to import it into the master folder in Fantasy Grounds, because there is a subfolder within your campaigns in the campaign section for your campaign folders, or there's a master which is in the higher level directory, and that will be shared amongst all your campaigns. So you got to remember that there's 2 different areas where you can put these maps. One is unique and specific to a campaign. The other would be a universal folder. So in that case, that would be the data folder in your Fantasy Grounds interface. So what I'm going to do is I got to go through my folders. And the reason I didn't get this all set up ahead of time is because I want to teach. So there's no point in just saying, okay, here's the map. I wanted to actually show how it worked. So I'm actually dragging the map that Moepsii made into a folder. The file size the final rendering is 881 kilobytes, which is under a meg. That is a recommended size for Fantasy Grounds, Unity and Classic. If you want a little bit higher quality, you're certainly welcome to, but it's recommendable that you don't make that map any bigger than like 10 megabytes or something like that, because that's really hard on your players when you push the map to them. So he's rendered this at 50 pixels, which is a manageable, workable file size. If you don't do that, what's happening is at a local level, you can work on it. But when you push the map to your players, it becomes very difficult on them. So now that I have done that, I'm going to hit this refresh here on the bottom. It's next to the folder button. So when I click refresh, it has now made a campaign folder. So if I double click on this, and again, I'm in images, there's a little preview thumbnail of the map. So if I double click, it gives me a larger preview. And at this point, I can decide if I want to create an asset record for my campaign. So what that means is I'm going to add this map to this campaign as a usable and workable image. So what I need to do is open up the Maps or Images button. And as a good practice, I'm going to make a group. So if you are finding yourselves working on a map and you want to add line of sight and such, I recommend that you create a group. That way it stays together and that it doesn't get mixed in with any other things you have loaded. In this case, I pretty much have a blank slate, so I don't need to worry too much. But I'm going to go ahead and create a group. So I use this little arrow drop down and click on the Edit Groups button, and then this green plus button comes up. So it says Group 1. So I'm just going to call this Moepsii's Maps. So that's the name of the group. Now I'm going to get out of the edit mode by clicking on the Stop Editing Groups button. And now I have a category for just Moepsii's Map. This is especially useful if you're going to have more than one. And then you can organize them within this group instead of having them scattered all over the place. So now when I click Create Image Record from Asset, it's not only going to open up, but now it is part of this group. And that's exactly what you want. So now the next thing I'm going to do is consider that this title is Ice Castle Dungeon. So that's fine for me. So I'm going to put a little bit of organization on the file name. So I'm going to put map, comma, and then maybe just clean this up a little bit. So it's map, comma, Ice Castle Dungeon. And then over here, I might give it a formal name instead of just a generic name. So this is just the name of the image pretty much and the DM's title. But over here, I could say Gnomish Steamworks or Dwarven Factory or whatever you want to call it. So I'm just going to call this the Steamworks. And if you click on this little ID button, what happens is when you share this to your players, they don't see the actual file name, they see the Steamworks. And that's handy when you're sharing this image. It might say boss lair or something like that. You don't want to share that. You want to say something else. So that is one thing to remember when you're working with images is if you're happy with the title, just leave it. If you don't want to give away the plot or you think you want to be a little bit more sneaky about it, you unlock this and give it another title, and then you turn on the ID so it's not identified. Once the players have gone through the map, if you want, then you can reveal it so they know to remember the name of it. But that is basically one of the first steps. The next is orientation. So this is the way the map was created, But just for the sake of tutorial and for the sake of ease of use, I'm going to rotate this map. I'm going to rotate it probably 90 degrees so that the snow is up on top and that the rest of the layout is more of a horizontal layout. Even though it's a square map, I want to show you how to orient the map. So right now, I have the map tools open and I'm in play mode. So I want to go to layers mode, which is where you add and manage your layers. This is the bottom layer. So I'm going to click on the map, and you can click these clockwise, you can flip the map, you can do all kinds of things. So I'm going to flip it clockwise. So there's 45 degrees basically, and there's 90 degrees. So as you can see, the map is now oriented a different way. So this can give you either a horizontal view if you have a map that looks better horizontally, or however you want to orient it. So I can actually flip this over like this if I wanted to, or like that, or in the original orientation, which I think I'll leave it now that I look at it, because I can totally tell that this was the way it was oriented. Now you could make another copy of this. Down below there is a duplicate selected layers. So if you have a layer selected, I can actually click on that. And now I'll have two. So if you wanted to do that, you could. I'm not going to keep that layer, but I'm going to go ahead and delete it. So you highlight the layer you want to delete, and there's a little garbage can on the bottom. So there we go. So there's the map. I'm going to leave it in its original orientation now that I've looked at it. And now the next step is to lock it. So now that it's locked, it cannot be rotated or moved or anything else. That's important, especially if you do line of sight work and then you want to extract the data. You need to make sure this layer is locked so that when you extract the data from the maps to be used in Classic, you will not get the coordinates all messed up. Because once you lay the line of sight down, it creates numbers that are based on the position of this layer. And if you move it at any time by accident, all your work's going to be off. So you want to lock your dungeon map, your main map first, or if it's a layer of different maps and you have them grouped together in a folder, that would be another thing. So this is the main layer right here. This is the bottom layer. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the grid. I talked to Moepsii before the class or before this episode or this presentation, and he told me these are 50 pixels. So it's important to know that. Right now my numbers are set to 40, which I don't know why. And that's 50 and 50. And now if I click the visibility on, it'll come up. So I want to stretch this out just a little bit more. There we go. So there's 50 by 50. And I need to be in the grid mode. So make sure you're in the right mode. And I have it set to 50 by 50. And it is aspect locked, so that means if I change one, the other one will scale accordingly. If you have an oblong map or the squares are off, you might be able to adjust it by unclicking the aspect lock and having like more of a rectangular shape. But that may or may not work. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and turn on the visibility. And as you can see, this thing's kind of massive. It's a large map. And we have basically, 15 feet here in these squares. And another thing I'm going to do is turn down the opacity of the grid so it's not so obnoxious. And I can change the color. So I'm going to change the color to like a bluish kind of purple, which I really like. And then I'm going to turn down the alpha, which is the transparency layer. And you can have it where it's barely visible, but it's still there. So when you zoom in, you can still see it, but it's not so obnoxious and you can actually see the map. The next thing is positioning these squares. So roughly between this door and this door, the map is basically a little bit off on the centering. So what I'm going to do is for the grid, that is. So what I'm going to do is nudge it over and try to make this even as I can with my eyeballs. I think that's pretty close because you have a square here and here. So you have basically 3 squares in the center of that door. And I think that by adjusting this over, I was able to achieve somewhat of a centering. So you just pick an object and center things off of it and see if it works for you. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to basically center these squares the other way so that they have a centered look to them as well. So I want this centered between the doorway and the wall. So I think that's pretty close. So you have the thickness of the wall plus the doorway. So that looks pretty close to being where it should be. Might be off a little bit, but it's fine. It doesn't have to be perfect. So I just have this down to where when I go to draw the line of sight, I have a little bit more reference so you can see this line is somewhat down the center of this wall section. And if you really look at this close, it's pretty close. So that's another thing to consider. Now, I think I might have made the lines a little too light, but you can always go back and fix that. So I'm still in the grid layer, and I'm going to just slightly turn that grid up. There we go. Now it's a little bit more visible, and the reason I'm doing that is so I can see when I'm working on the line of sight. And it kind of gives you a guide. It's not something I'm going to trace, but at least I have a rough idea of where I'll be when I get into this. So the next thing is to do the doors and the windows. So you have to determine where those are. So it looks like this is an open doorway, but then this one's closed. So we need to go through those and basically put those in. And they're just going to be rectangles. They're really not that difficult. They can overlap a little, so that's not a big problem. A lot of people get uptight and they want everything to be perfect. That's not necessary for the line of sight. Unless you're going to be selling the product or something like that, or using it as a presentation, I don't think I would worry too much about how accurate the lines are, as long as they represent what they should. So it looks like, hey, Matthew and Steve and Moepsii, great. The grid in FG looks smaller than in Photoshop. The door should easily be 3 squares wide. Okay, so I will adjust that. So let me go into the scale of it and adjust the scale. So this is at 50 by 50. So let me try 60. So 60 looks a lot closer. Yeah, 60 looks like the magic number. Yep, I think you're right. I think 60 is the number we want. Yep, that's exactly it too. And then the width of this wall is pretty close. It's a lot closer now. That makes more sense. To be honest, it looks better too. It looks a lot more symmetrical. So 60, I would agree, has a lot better effect. Yes. All right, so that's fixed. I'm glad you're here because this is the type of thing that you have to deal with when you're working with these maps. So this might even help you down the road when you're creating a map to have this in mind. And that's one reason I invited you here, so that you could kind of take an assessment of how this works, so that when you do your work next time, you'll have a better consideration for what has to happen. And that's one of the things that we have to fight with, is the scale if you don't know it. So 60 is now the new aspect ratio, or the ratio for the squares. Yeah, I think that's a lot better. It's definitely looks better. Yep, yeah, that's it. That's the number. You could probably go, if you want to take the width of the lines in consideration, you can probably go 62 or 61, but now you're nitpicking, and that's what takes time, is when you start nitpicking. All right, so now I'm going to go do all the doors. So I'm going to start with the top and work my way down. And the stairwell here that leads down, we're going to put a pit there, and then we'll any other objects that might be very high or high up in the air. Like these might be pits or they might be stacks. I'm not sure. Moepsii, are these stacks or pits? It could just be like a raised oven that has like lava in it, or is it sunk down into the ground where it's more like a pool? So I'm not sure, but that I'll handle those accordingly. Yeah, I think you're right. It needs the additional 10. See if I would do 60. I think we would need to use 70 in Fantasy Grounds. All right, well, I'll play around with it a little bit more. Let's see what we got. I might do like a small increment just to see if that extra 10 pixels makes any difference. So let's take a looky-loo here. I've seen that a long time ago in the forums, I believe. So right now, this is pretty close. You can see it's got a little bit off here. So I'm going to go with 62. Yeah, that's even better, to be honest. Yeah. Now I just need to fix this. Yeah, 62 is the number in this case for the way you painted the map. Like 62 is the black spots are doors. Okay. So you talking about this here? So if those are doors, then this is raised up. Okay, got it. So that helps me when I make the map, that I can create that illusion. It kind of helps. Okay, so that's great. 62 is the new number now. So we're playing around with the scale to get a better feel for what needs to happen here. Yeah, it looks a lot more centered and a lot more accurate. So even better. So now we've got it refined down to 62. Started at 50, went to 60, now we're at 62. So you do want to avoid that if you can when you're working on it. It really helps to communicate with the artist, or if you're making the map, to understand how this works. So this is basically Moepsii in the chat. If anyone has any questions, he's here helping me out with this, and we're kind of going through his maps and seeing how they line up. It looks like, yeah, we're there. That's exactly where we want to be. All right, so great, awesome. All right, so we got the grid. That's the main thing. So if you don't want to do line of sight and you just want to use the old way, you would throw a mask on it and hit this plus button, and this would be like the old classic way, and then you'd unmask certain areas. So that's only if you want to do it the old way. So now the newer methodology is to add the line of sight. So the first thing I'm going to do is the doors. Now this is very important if you use Fantasy Grounds, that you got to get used to where the tools are. It's still taking me a little while, but you have these upper tools. So we have a play mode, which is what you would use when you're getting ready to play. And then you would enable line of sight. And then if you add characters on there, as soon as they grab their tokens and start moving around, the line of sight activates. As the game master, it's not quite as exquisite because you're going to still be able to see everything. But as a player, a lot of the stuff gets cut off, which is what you want. So right now I have line of sight off because I don't even have it set up yet. But that's play mode. So that's the mode you're going to be in when you're done with everything. So layers mode is for manipulating layers. This for right now, we just have the bottom layer, so we don't have to worry about that right now. You can create paint layers, which is fun. You can stamp things, you can erase stuff, you can, draw and paint with certain textures. You can even paint with the assets. It's pretty interesting. Then you have an effects layer where you can add effects. So in this case, at the end of this or near the end, I'm going to add snow, but it's only going to be outside. So maybe I'll just do that now just to have it out of the way. So I'm going to go ahead and add a snow layer. So on the very bottom, I think most people click on effects on the top and then they try to pick snow. Well, that works, but it's really not as effective sometimes when you have more layers that you want to add. But as you can see, it's snow all around this thing. We don't want that. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a mask layer. So when you're in the effects layer, you have the ability to mask and unmask, and then you have the ability to reveal or hide. So in this case, I'm going to add the mask, which blocks everything. And then I'm going to take and draw a square around this so that we only see snow in this area. So I'm going to go to the reveal area, which is this little button here, this eyeball, and I'm just going to draw a square around this box. So that allows us to basically manage the snow, so it's only showing on the map. Now I don't want the snow here in the factory. So what I'm going to do is hide the areas that I don't want affected. So to make this simpler, I'm just going to draw a big square. And then on this edge here, I'm just going to draw that out. To draw it out without making a square, you have to hold down the Shift key. Or if I might just take this little rectangle piece here and draw another rectangle, it's not going to hurt anything. And again, I'm in the hide area. So there we go. So now you only have snow outside. So generally what I'll do is I'll make a folder and I will call this effects. I'll say map effects. And then I'll drag the snow into that folder. That way it's separated. You don't have a big list of things. You got a grouping. So anytime you make a new asset, like let's say if you're going to add furniture, I would make another folder and call it furniture and put everything in there. Or you can do it by room or however you want to do it, but that makes it more organized. Now the snow itself is a little bit intense, so you can adjust it. So I can turn down the amount of snow. I can turn up the intensity a little bit, turn the speed down so it's not coming down so hard. And then the size, I can shrink it a little bit so it's not too big. But I do want to see the snow, so the intensity kind of brightens it up. So there we go. There's the snow outside. You can even add a bit of snow into the room since it's open 24/7. Ah, I got it. Yeah. You might want to scooch the window to the left. The plants cover a bit. Okay. Yeah, he's sending me more details as we go, but he wants me to scooch it to the left a little. So let me take a look at that. So hopefully you're talking about this line here. And as you can see, this is blocked. We don't want that. So I'll go to the reveal. Reveal that area. Reveal that area. There we go. And then I'm going to reveal this stuff here. So that was actually the Alt key. They remapped the key. So it's the Alt key that you have to hold down to draw. But that's basically what I did. So there's a little bit of snow coming in from the openings here. The plant border of the steaming overlay is covering up the controls in the top right of the Fantasy Grounds window. There you go, Moepsii. So we have someone who wants to. So you see, so you are blocking the snow with a mask or occluder, like as well. Thanks. Yes, that is exactly right. Once you're in the layer for that effect, you have to be in the effects layer, and then you have to select the actual effect. And then you can turn off the mask, turn it on and off. So I drew a big mask to occlude the outside of the map, and then I put in a hide feature to hide, around the factory. And then I also revealed certain areas so you can get that effect. So I'm still trying to figure out how to fix the scale. So do I need to move this over to be a little bit more centered? Is that what you were asking me to do? Because on the doorway, it looks right. But you're saying the wall is off? I mean, not quite sure. Yeah, you block the snow with a mask or an occluder. Yeah, that's the large one. It just covers a whole map, or you can cover a section. And then as you need to, you can, pull off the fine details. And by no means, I'm no expert. I'm actually practicing. So if you have any suggestions or if I'm doing something dumb, just let me know. See, like right here, I shouldn't probably have this. This isn't very, very well done. So I could go into the layer and hide this little area here. Oops, I hit Control Z. Can't remember what the redo is. I was told the other day. So I want to fix the scale of this because it's starting to drive me nuts now. Your overlay is covering controls and layer options for use. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I just took it off. Right now, that whole layer. That's supposed to go on the very top. Oh, you're saying the title. Oh, I got it. The little leaves on your. Oh, I'm not even using that up there, but I know what you're saying. Let me see if I can dismiss those. Got it. I'm talking about the map, and I wasn't thinking of. Oh, I see. It's up on the top right. My bad. Yeah. Let me see if I can get rid of those. There. How's that? That'll take care of it. Sorry about that. Now, is the scale correct? Because I'm kind of like, what the hell is going on here? So as you can see, it looks a little off between here and here, and from this wall to here, but that might just be the way it's drawn. So if I go into layers, it's unlocked. Oh, how did that get changed? That is so strange. Well, it's not actually. Yeah, I totally screwed this up. I just resized the map itself, which is not what I wanted. Okay, this is what we call a do-over. Anyway, so I'm gonna delete this let's just say this layer here. I got this at 6 million whatever. So I did not want to do that. So I'm going to delete the whole layer, start over. Wow, what is happening? Wow, that was something. Okay, so that was user error there. So I'm going to go ahead and start over. Now here's the castle here, and I already have a grid on it. So I'm going to turn the grid off temporarily, and I'm going to re-import the map itself. And there's a different way to do it. Instead of the way I added it earlier, this is a good example. So in your assets folder, after you've added your asset to your folder, you can come over here to your, see right now I don't have a campaign folder because I changed it. So if I go to click on images, there's my campaign folder. So if you have tokens, you got to make sure that you're in images. Now I'm in the campaign folder. There's the map. So I could drag that in here like that. But I think it resized it because I don't want to mess with the size because I had it set in there. So that may not be a good thing. But nonetheless, that's how you would, another way you could add the map. At this point, if you wanted to move it, you can drag it around anywhere you want. I'm in layers mode and I have this map selected. So now that I have it in here, I can actually manipulate it. Like I was saying, you can rotate it however you want to do it. You can also flip the map. There's this other, you can flip it horizontally if you want, or vertically. So you can change it up if you want, like a mirror image. Or like I said, you could duplicate it. So if you have another map, you could totally add it to it, like connect it or however you want to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and lock this layer. I don't want it to move anymore. And then I'm going to go to, yeah, this is the original size. So I want to leave that. Now I want to go to the grid and I'll do this again. So we have it set to 62. And I think that was a pretty good number. So I'll go ahead and turn on the visibility. So at this point, all I need to do is adjust the where it lies. So why does that look so different? Maybe it does need to be back at 50 or 60. Wow, now it's behaving even different. Maybe because I accidentally scaled or moved the size of the map. That's probably what happened. So now I'm looking at like 50 something. Yeah, I totally messed that up. So as a word of caution, do not scale or mess with the original map size. I think that's what I've done. So you don't want to mess with the scale unless you know what you're doing. And obviously, I don't know what I'm doing because before it was perfect. We had, 3 squares in here. So now it's at 50. So this seems to be what he had it before. When I say he, I'm talking about Moepsii because it was supposed to be a 50 scale map. So that seems a lot like closer to what it should have been to begin with. So I must have rescaled it somehow, the actual layer. So you want to be very careful with that. That's why I have it locked. I thought I locked it before I did it, but apparently not. Yeah, that's what I thought, Carl, because I messed around on accident. I was in the map layer, and I really thought that I had it down, but actually, um, it was something where I overlooked it. So when I was setting up the grid initially, I totally borked the dimensions. So that was something I don't want to mess with if I can help it. So now that I have that layer locked, it shouldn't mess around with it too much. It's nice to have you, Carl. If you guys don't know Carl Pinder, he works for Smiteworks. He's the one that did a lot of the developing and creation on the map tools and some of the other aspects of Fantasy Grounds. I think how long have you been working on this, Carl? About 6 years, something like that. It's been a while because I remember talk of it back when I first started. It was like 2013 or something like that. Yeah, so Carl's the one that actually designs this, and he always comes in here and makes sure I'm doing it right. But I'm just practicing right now, and I am taking one of Moepsii's maps, and I'm going to add line of sight to it. I'll add the snow effects and such later, but I'm going to go ahead and do all the doors first, and then I'm going to do the line of sight, then we'll add the effects. So that's generally how I attack the project. I'm kind of going all over the place to help people. Let's see. I'm gonna go ahead and post that link for you, Moepsii. And I don't think you have admin. Oh, did you post it in here? I wasn't sure. Just in case, though. There is the link, just in case. Yeah, 5 or 6 years. That sounds right, Carl. All right, so Carl, this map was actually made by Moepsii here. He's a community member in Fantasy Grounds College for a couple years. He makes some pretty decent maps. I think that Moepsii is one of the better mappers out there. I got a couple favorites. Obviously I like Josh. Chris is one of them that comes from Game Tile Warehouse. And then I also appreciate Tom Kartos and Zovia. So those are my top cartographers because they have the quality and the color I'm looking for. So yeah. Okay, anyhow, back to this map. So I have this layer locked. I have basically my map set where I want it. And I want to start putting in the doors. So I'm just going to go to a new tool now. So right now I'm in the grid tool. So you got to remember where you're at. And that's one of the main things I can teach you, is that you really want to understand where you're at in the tool before you make changes. That's one of the things I have trouble with. So I'm going to go ahead and change over to the line of sight tool, which is this brick wall. And you have all these different options up here. So I'm going to go ahead and add a door option. So that's what I'm going to work with for now. And I'm going to go into rectangle mode. And all I'm going to do right now is kind of make a rectangle around this doorway. And as you can see, it's not perfect. I don't need to have it exact, but if I draw the line of sight later, it needs to intersect. So you don't want loose lines around your door. So I'm just going to leave it like that for now. And you just systematically go through with the same tool and draw out your doorways. I tried to leave these a little bit wider because when you play, if you make them too thin, they're very hard to open and close. So you got to keep that in mind. So Moepsii, is this an archway or is this a door? To me, it looks like an archway. Yeah, no problem, Sedaine. I'm going to do a little bit more of that shortly. Did that link work in the Fantasy Grounds chat there for the Etsy? Want to give Moepsii credit. They're all doors. Okay, got it. All right, I will proceed. They're just different types of doors. So right now I'm doing all the doorways. So I made that a little bit bigger than I wanted to. So I will go back and fix it when I'm all done, or you can do it as you go. It's easier just to plot everything out and then go back and fix any mistakes. But since we're teaching here, I'll go ahead and do it now. So let's just say you didn't like the way this came out. So what you have to do is go into select mode. If you try to adjust it when you're in rectangle mode, it's going to draw more rectangles. So you need to make sure you're in the right part of the tool. So I'm in the selection tool. It shouldn't be drawing any more lines. So I just selected that corner and brought it in where I want it. So I made that a little too big. So we're close. All right, so that's how you would fix something that's a little bit off. And now I'm going to go back to the rectangle mode. So this is where people get goofed up. When you adjust, you're in select mode. When you're drawing, you're in one of these other three modes. And I don't know how many times I went through this when I first started using the tool, is I'd still be in one of the drawing tools and not be able to select the correct thing and ended up drawing something. Then I would get frustrated and not want to use it. And that's just because I wasn't practiced enough and I'm kind of ignorant. But you got to play with this tool to get used to it. And if Carl, if you are still there, I have a very, very humble request. In the assets folder, I don't know how hard this would be, but one of the things that I noticed is that it always defaults to tokens. Is there any way to get it to default to images? Because tokens are less, I would think they're less used overall than images. So honestly, I would say images, portraits, tokens, and then all. That's the probably from a ease of use, more than likely type thing. But that's just my opinion. Because when I come into the assets, I always have to switch over to images. I rarely go into tokens unless I'm playing a game or something. But that's just a kind of a more of a picky preferential thing. I don't know if that's hard to fix that or not, but that definitely drives me bananas. And it's just something that I think is more of a creature feature ease of use. Okay, so I'm going to go in here and draw out, and I'll actually put that in the wish list too. So, because the right way to ask for a feature change is not to do it during a stream, but to actually go to the feature request list and do it there. So my apologies. All right, so I'm going to draw the doorway here. So I'm in the rectangle mode and in the doorway mode. Now, if you wanted to, you can hand trace around these doors, but that is a lot of frickin' work for a door. So no doors down here. There's a door here I've already taken care of. There's a door here. This one's an open doorway. This is like a basement type thing. And then this is another door up here for like storage or for like looks like an eating area. All right, so that is basically how this doorway thing is going to work. Now over here, you have these stairs, which you could probably add terrain so that on each level, the person gets up and then they finally reach the top level. So Moepsii is this level here higher than the ground floor for like, if they want to open up these crates, they're already up a couple stories or up a story so they don't have to bend over, or is this where they get out off the staircase? It's hard to tell from the top down. Oh, I'll have to do John. Yeah, I will definitely bug John about that. That drives me so bananas. I don't know why. It's not something that, it's not a big deal, but if you use the program, you'll get it. Let's see. Let's see, what do we got here? So, yeah, so Moepsii, just wondering if that staircase, I think to me it looks like it finishes out here on the level with the crane, and then the workers can go up another flight or two so that they can get to taller crates to tie them and untie them. I think that's what it is. The stairs do go up. Okay, great. Thanks. So that kind of helps me when I want to plot out my line of sight, because what I'll do is I'll put separate layers of line of sight on these, and as you climb, you'll be able to access those. So I don't need to put a layer on every single piece, but I think from here over would be like a level basically, and then up here. So I'd probably put the green terrain, because when you're down here on the ground, you can't get up. You can't see past that until you climb up the stairs. So I think that's how I'm going to plan that one. Okay, so we have the doors done. Now we're going to do the line of sight. So there's a couple different ways of handling line of sight. You could just put one line through the center of the wall, but being that these walls are very thick, I think I'm going to actually make them actual walls and not just a line. So that's kind of the way I'm going to attack this. Now, if they were thin, what I mean thin is like, 10 pixels or 20 pixels wide, that I would just draw a line through. But a lot of these are thick walls, so I want to make sure that that's shown and that you're not able to see into these walls either. So I'm going to go ahead and just do this center one, which is pretty easy. It's just a big square. So I'm in the line of sight tool. I'm in the wall tool, and I'm going to go to the rectangle tool because this is just a rectangle. It's fairly easy to draw. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a rectangle. Fairly straightforward, no problems. I'm going to look for other shapes that might require that. So I could do that with this if I wanted to, but I just wanted to show you that you can use that part of the tool to create your lines. So I could kind of do the same thing with this inner area. The problem is that I have to connect it to the door. Because if this is a straight line, I can go right through the doorway. So I have to consider how I would do it. I'm not sure, Carl, how would you handle that? Would you draw this around and just connect the walls, or would you draw a line through it? Because I usually take it and I'll draw the line around a wall if it's really thick. But if it's, one of those things where, it's a thin wall, I'll just draw straight through it. So I guess it's an opinion or a kind of a, a preference thing. But yeah, the thick walls, I get it. I'm not upset about that. I've just got to think about how I want to attack the line of sight. And that's one of the things you need to do when you're working is how are you going to do this? But you have to know what tools you have and how to use the tools before you can, plan it. So keep playing around with it. And look, I missed a door. So I'm going to go back to the door mode. And I'm in the rectangle mode. And I'm still in line of sight mode. And I drew in the door. Now I'm going to go back to line of sight. And I have to decide how I want to do these areas. Some people might do a series of rectangles. I don't know if that's right or not. It would be simpler if we were able to do that. Let me try one. So the thing about it is you have to sort of draw it to where it's going to tie in with your doors. Then you're going to go back and fix the door. So that's the problem with doing it that way. I would draw around and connect to the doors, the magnetic snap. Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking too. All right, we do that. So I'm going to go ahead and again, I'm going to make sure I'm in the line of sight tool. And this time I'm going to be in the line tool. I could use rectangles, but I think I want to draw it out so I have a little bit more control. It's going to take longer, but that's how it goes. And then don't forget, if you need to adjust something or fix it, you have to go into select mode. Don't try to move something when you're in line mode. That's generally where people go wrong, is they're not in the correct mode when they're editing or changing things. So when you're adding things, you're in either one of these three tools here. When you're adjusting or probably trying to take things away or move them, you need to be in the select tool. So just remember that. That'll help you a lot. So I'm going to go ahead and start up here in this corner and start drawing. You can use the arrow keys. So once you plot a point, which I'm going to do here, you can use the arrow keys instead of having to push everything over. And I'm going to zoom out a little so I can see what I'm doing. Now, to quit this line, if you wanted to stop, you would double click, and don't triple click because that'll start a new line. It's very sensitive. The other thing is I haven't stopped drawing yet. I'm still in draw mode. So I'm going to use the down arrow to continue. But if you need to stop, you have to double click when you're in that little square. If you double click outside of that square, it's going to create another line. So just you can hit escape as well if you're worried about that. If you can't click on it properly, your mouse is acting up. Now here's the magnetic part. When I click in here, it's automatically going to magnetically try to connect. So Carl, do I connect here at this point, or do I just keep drawing and connect them later? Because that's something that people want to know as they're progressing in their skills. I would honestly just draw the line and go back and fix it later, but that's just me. I mean, you could get it on there pretty close. Again, I'm just snapping it as close as I can, but later on I can go and adjust. This is what takes patience and a little forethought. But you know, you don't have to be absolutely perfect. You can go back and you know, adjust the stuff as needed. See, as you can see, as I draw my line, it wants to pull them over into this thing. That's a good thing. That's the snap button up here, magnetic snap. If for some reason it's not working out for you, you temporarily turn that off, but don't forget to turn it back on. And as you can see, it didn't actually connect, so I'll have to go back and fix that. But that's basically something you want to avoid. Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, the arrow keys, yeah, definitely. But you have to be in the map mode. Like if you use the arrow keys in other modes, it will move the points rather than draw them. So you got to get used to it. Connect the points as you are drawing. Yeah, I agree. So I'm going to finish this line. All I did was double click and that stopped. Now, if I want to make these points match so I don't forget, go to select mode. I'm not in line mode anymore. Get that through your head that you're not drawing anymore. You are moving points. So I have selected this point. And it should technically snap. There we go. So if you really want to find out, you zoom in really fine. And if you have trouble, yeah, I don't know what's up with that, but it's not snapping. The other one did. Well, at least it looked like it did. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to fix that. So this is what we're talking about for bleed over. If these don't have connection, what'll happen is the line of sight will bleed through the walls and such, and that's something you want to avoid. So in this case, I kind of floundered that. So this would actually probably break the line of sight. Yep. Now I have another point. But you can adjust these later. I mean, it's not going to be the end of the world. But see here, I overshot it in case. Huh. Drag the point past the line and it will create a new point at the intersection. The magnetic snap only snaps points, not to lines. Got it. So drag the point past the line and it will create. Okay. I get it now. That's good to know because those are little things that you don't really consider. So again, I am in select mode. So did I do that right by overshooting it? There, I see there's another point here created. Huh, interesting. Drag the point past the line. End. Yeah, it's pretty close. Yeah, that really looks better. That's what I want. So the line's now like purple looking. So thanks, Carl. I think that's pretty close. Drag the points way over the line. Okay. Okay. I will try that. So let's see. Remember, folks, this is not a perfect thing. This is just me practicing using the tool because I got to teach this and I really need to know what I'm doing. So you get to help me figure it out. Yeah, it's not letting me select the correct line. Yeah, it's not letting me do anything else with it. I think it's connected, but I could be wrong. Yeah, I tried to select the line and now it's not letting me pull it over, so maybe it's part of the wall now. Because I noticed once they're merged, sometimes you can't move the line unless you delete one or the other. So I'm not sure why it does that, but yeah, I tried to drag it and it kind of gave me grief. It wouldn't let me move it. So none of these points would move on me. Now I can move this point. Pretty sure. Yeah, that one moves just fine. Oh well. All right, so you want to systematically go around the map and map out all of these different areas. So I'm not going to do the entirety of it yet. I might do that later in private. But for you guys, for the sake of learning, I guess I'm going to square out this and then I'm going to do a couple other features. So I'm going to go back to the wall tool and I'm in line of sight mode and I'm in the wall mode. So I'm going to line this one out, this thick wall. When I was done, I hit escape or double click and it ends the drawing mode. So I'm going to switch to a different mode. Right now I have the line of sight for this walled area. Yeah, I think so, Carl. It looks probably okay. We'll find out when we turn it on. Okay, so now I'm going to add a newer feature, which is the pit. So the pit right now is an experimental thing. I like the pit. I think it should stay if it works. So I'm going to pit out this bottom area. So really, it's just to show that if your token is down here at the bottom of these stairs, they're not going to be able to see out. So this also draws as a square. And as you just saw, it snapped a grid. I mean, it was very easy. See, this one, I could possibly move it. So if you needed to, go to select mode and just do that. Yeah, there we go. So now it's all snapped to grid and ready to go. So what happens here is, first of all, to test out what you're doing, grab yourself a character or an NPC. So I'm going to import a character. So I'm clicking this little up arrow because I don't have any characters. And I give it a second to kind of go through my library of characters. Now you could import any characters you want that are in your campaign. So I have a bunch of them in here, and I think I'm going to take this Allison, this life cleric. And if I click this plus button, it will add her to the campaign. So this replaces the character manager in Classic. So if you build characters anywhere in Fantasy Grounds, generally you'll have access to them within that rule set. And then I'm just going to hit the back arrow, and now she's available to be used. So at this point, a player would probably claim it or whatever. So now I'm going to go to the combat tracker, which is the next step. And I'm going to put this dwarf on this combat tracker. So this is how I'm going to test the map. Now the map itself, we're still kind of editing. So I'm going to change to play mode because that's where you have to be when you're actually playing. I'm going to put the token on the map. So I'm going to put her right over here by the staircase. So her token right here. And now I'm going to turn on line of sight, which is this eyeball. And you're like, oh crap, it's dark, can't see anything. Well, once your player picks the token and actually picks it up, it will show the line of sight. And they won't see the silhouetted area. It'll be all black, provided everything's set up right. And as you can tell, I'm not done yet, so this wall is allowing light through. So until I fix that, it's going to do that. But this here is working properly. So as I move around, it's actually right. All right, so what I wanted to show you was she's going to go down the stairs. And once she's in this pit area, she cannot see anything out here. So that is how that works. So she cannot see outside of the pit area unless she moves out. So now that she's out, she can see what's going on. So this elevation here is a lot lower than the rest. I mean, it's almost to the basement level. So that's what that could be used for. I'm going to do some other things. Like these pots here, these are kilns or some sort of hot ovens. So I'm going to draw an ellipse around here and kind of use it as a guide. So I'm going to have it right here on this inner circle and then right here in this other circle. So first of all, I'm going to recenter the map. So you have this little drop down toolbar on the top right. You can click this zoom to fit and it will bring you back to a centered state. I'm also going to turn off the line of sight for now. And I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to go back to the line of sight mode. So I think I'm going to make this terrain up here instead of a wall, because technically you could probably climb up here. So I'm going to go with the ellipse tool, and what I normally do is I'll get to the center here, and I'll just draw out rough shape of what that is going to be. Once I do that, I need to go to select mode, and if you double click, all the little lines will be together. Then you can drag it into place. So I was pretty close with my circle. So again, my technique was to size it up, to start with the center, and then pull it out until it gets close to where you're at. And that's pretty damn good. I mean, I want to say that's within. And if you want to make adjustments, you can just select one and adjust as you need to. I think it's good enough. I'm not going to mess that up. That's pretty decent. So that's how you would adjust for circles. So that once you learn how to use the ellipse tool, it's actually pretty nice. When I first started using it, it was confusing me because the circle I was drawing was an octagon looking shape until I let go of it, and then I said, oh, it's actually a circle. Then I didn't know you had to select all the points to move the whole circle, and I was moving one line at a time. Oh yeah, I learned the hard way for sure. So now we have this circle here. So again, I'm going to line it out, which is kind of roughly know where the center is. Go to the ellipse tool and draw it out. So I'll have a rough idea. So you kind of have to have a feel for space. And that's important. Now I'll go to the select tool, double click on any of these points to select them all. And as you can tell, I made this a little smaller. Well, that is basically not what I wanted because I have a pit here. So if you make a mistake, you didn't use the right tool, or you've come up with some sort of harebrained idea and you don't like it, you can hit Control Z. So see, I didn't pay attention. I was in the wrong tool. So I just hit Control Z, and now I'm back to this, which I want to get rid of. There we go. So you want to make sure you're in the correct tool, and that pertains to me. So I'm going to go to the ellipse tool, and I'm going to go to the terrain tool, which is what I had originally wanted. So that's pretty close. Then I go to the selection tool, double click on any one of these points. Drag this puppy over. That's close enough. And then I'm going to do the same thing. Go back to the ellipse tool and draw out another circle. Again, select tool, double click in here, place this where you want it. So ideally, I don't mind that it's not exact, but if you want to fix that, you could select whatever tool you're in and move the line. There we go. That's not too bad. So that's basically a way to do the terrain. So unless you climb up here, you're not going to be able to see the top. So that's just one way to add your terrain, and that's kind of what you're trying to do is block the vision of something that's higher than your head or higher than, 1 story or whatever. So like this area here would be a candidate for that. So I'd go in the rectangle tool and rectangle that off. And that way, when the players get up here, they can't see up here. And when they do, you can open that up and then they'll be able to see. So it's just a matter of preference and where your things are in relation. So I'd have to do the same exact thing for this other smokestack or this oven. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add a little effect here. So I want to add some movement for the fire. So this is kind of overkill, but it just will show you a usage of the new tools. So I'm going to add an effects layer. So again, I click down on the bottom, there's an effects layer. And I'm going to call this fire. And what I'm going to do is actually put a water effect on it, but I'm going to make it look so it looks like it's moving a little bit. So the first thing I'm going to do is go up to the effects menu or the tool and use the drop down, and I'm going to use the water layer. And as you can see, the whole map is like that. You don't want that. So what you're going to do is map it out to where only this area shows. So you click and enable mask. So that blocks it all. It's still there, but it's underneath the mask. And then the only thing I'm going to reveal is this area in here. So if I go to the reveal area, I am going to basically draw on the inside. So I don't want to touch these lines here. I want to just draw on the very inside. If you touch these black lines, it's going to pull the edge of the oven into the flames, and that may not be desirable because it'll look like the whole thing is moving and not just the lava or the hot fire. So let me draw in here. So I'm going to hold the Alt key and draw around. So as you can see this here, I don't want that. So I need to make some adjustments. So first of all, you turn the intensity where you want it. I think I like it intense because it'd be like flame. You can turn the speed down. And if you turn down the droplet size, it's not as drastic. And then what I want to do is take and fix some of this stuff here. So I might hide a little bit more of this area. So if I come in here and draw this area around here, I want to hide some of this brick area. So anyways, that's how you make an effect. So if you come in here and you try to create this water or any kind of movement, you have to be careful where you put it. So I'm going to draw it again, but this time I want to make it a little bit more inside. So I don't have all that. I don't want the walls to wobble, just the fire. So again, I'll go to the effects down below, and I'm going to select the effects banner up here on the top, or the tool, and I'm going to select water. And you can see it's all warped. We don't want that. So there's a layer tool up here. So I'll hit the plus button that puts a mask layer. And now I'm going to draw out this circle, but this time I'm going to be a little bit further inside. And you hold the Control key or the Alt key to draw that out. All right, so now you would make your adjustments. There we go. So it's very subtle, but you have some movement in there. Now I'm going to add another layer for distortion, because right now it just looks like a blob moving around. So I'm going to take and add another layer. So again, instead of water, it's going to be an ocean layer. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the effects tool on the bottom, add effects layer, and it's a separate layer than the water is. And I'm going to click on effects and drop down to where I find ocean. The ocean provides this kind of moving distortion. So I'm going to add this plus button here. And I'm going to only reveal, again, this little area inside. So I want to go to reveal area. And I'm going to unmask this part here. You have to hold down the Alt key. Now, this layer is existing on top of the fire because of how I have it stacked. So I want this actually under. I don't want this as noticeable. So I'm going to move it underneath the other layer. Okay, I'm going to make a folder. So this is going to be my effects folder. So now this effect is under, not on top of. So you'll get this little bit of distortion here. And now I'm going to go to the ocean level and turn down the distortion a little bit. Maybe change the size a little bit. Vertical movement and the speed. So now it has more of a flame look to it. And then if you really want to get fancy, I could put the smoke in here. Try to follow what's already there. So Moepsii has opted to already put the steam effect in here. So it may not work as well as I'd like, but I'll show you how that would be. So I'm going to add another effects layer. And this time I'm going to pick mist. And as you can see, I have this mist going over the top. So again, I want to add a mask. And the mist layer is going to be on top of both of those layers here. So what I'm going to do is just reveal this area around where the steam is. It may not look right, but it'd still be kind of a cool effect. So I'm going to go ahead and start tracing around here on the inside. So it may not look right yet, so turn down the speed and the amount. And what I'm doing is, you can see this line here. So I'm taking the amount down to where it blends in more, to just about 7. And then the speed, I turn that up a little. It is very subtle. I mean, you can't even see it hardly from out here. But it adds movement to your map. So out here, that'll look more like fire or something going on in there. Maybe there's a fire elemental hanging out. Whatever it is, it's going to enhance your maps if you want them to look that fancy. And then if I have an asset, I might put a token in there for a fire elemental. So let's see what that looks like. So now I'm in the tokens folder, which in this case I want to be in there. And I'm going into my data folder because I actually have a bunch of tokens that are shared amongst all of my different campaigns. I have a folder here called Bernardo's tokens because this is from Bernardo Hasselman's work. And then I'm going to click on Elemental because that's what I have it organized like. And here is a fire elemental. So I'm actually going to add this as an asset, not a token. So what that means is it's not really meant to be moved around. It's not an NPC, although I could have a stat block for it ready to go case. But I'm going to drag and drop this in here as a layer and then move it. Or I can stamp it. So if I go to the stamp mode and I drag the elemental into the stamp, I will pick the stamp tile, and there it is. So this is full size. So I only want it 1 by 1. So I'm going to resize it. Or if you want to do it manually, you can select the fire elemental, hold down shift, and drag these corners inward. Now I have to go back to the selection layer or option. Make sure I'm on the elemental. And hold down the control key and position it where you want it. So now you have this illusion that this movement is around this token. And now I'm going to hit the control key or whatever you want to do. Now that this guy is in here, I can recolor it or shade it so that it's, a little bit more useful. Like maybe I can tone down some of the colors. I'm going to turn down the transparency a little bit so it blends in with the background. So it's not as prominent. So that helps a lot. Just turning down the alpha, it just makes it blend in just a little bit more. That way it's not too contrasted, unless that's what you want. If you really want this to stick out like a sore thumb, there you go. But I'm going to turn it down a little bit. And then I just want to rotate this. So if I'm selecting this thing here, and I can click these clockwise tools, or counterclockwise, or flip it, that's what I'm going to get. I'm actually going to make it a little bit smaller. Now, if you need to place it specifically and you don't want it to snap to grid, temporarily turn that off and then turn it back on. So now I have a fire elemental that is in that. So I'm going to leave this guy in this layer. And there we go. So there's our fire elemental. And he should actually be under the mist, but he's not covering it or anything, so that's fine. And his coloring, there, I turned down the alpha a little bit more. So let's see what that looks like in the line of sight mode. In the play mode, yeah, so she can't really see up here unless she climbed up here. So this fire elemental is like partially submerged into this fire. So, and then don't forget we have this little bit of steam coming through here. It's kind of hard to see it though because I blended it in, but nonetheless, it gives you that movement, kind of brings things to your attention, to your eye. You could also put a little bit of fire distortion on where the vents are. Could you use another effect layer like time of day to brighten an area around the flaming pot to provide? I think you could. I can try that. Let's see. So I'll go to time of day, effects, and I want to add an effects layer. And we're going to call this time of day. And obviously you can see how much it's affected it. So I'm going to add a layer. And then I'm going to trace around this so that I have just this, maybe a pooled area where it actually affects. So I'm going to use a elliptical tool, maybe, depending on what tool I use. So, don't really have that option here. So, Carl, it would be nice if we had a tool that allowed us to draw masks with some of the same functions or tools that we have with drawing lines. I don't know if that's a hard thing to do or not. That was another feature that I had thought about as I'm using the product, is that when you need to draw terrain, or not terrain, but line of, or these effects, you don't have the same, or when you need to alter the hide area or the reveal, you don't have the same tool set to draw if you wanted to do an elliptical unmasking or masking. I think that would be helpful just to have a square or a circle. But that's just a wish list thing. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and draw out an area. Maybe, I don't see, here's the thing, you don't know where the shadow is going to be. So I'm just going to, like you said, do an area, just a rough area around here. So I am in the reveal area tool, and I'm going to hit Alt and draw around this area. Okay, so there's shadow. So let me see. Yeah, so you can kind of sort of play with it. But it not quite what you'd want, because it looks more like a stain or like a pool of water. So there you go. There's a good usage for it if you think about it. So it doesn't quite give you what you want, but it does create shadow. I think shadow is a better use of it than brightness. But if you have it on red, are kind of a reddish hue. It kind of looks like it. Yeah, so yeah, I imagine, Carl. I'm sure that's come up 100 times. Thanks though for listening. The Yeah, better masking tools. Yeah, that's just, geometrical shapes. I don't know how hard that is to do that, but without breaking 50 other things. Okay, so that is that. So I noticed there was some water. So I'm going to do some line of sight on the water. So we're going to go to the effects area. And we already have a water effect. So if I go to water and I reveal this area, oh, that may not be what I want, but we'll see. Yeah, so there's the water. And then I want to go to ocean. And unmask this part. Yeah, that's not quite what I wanted. And you have to be careful with water too. You don't want to pull in the edges like I did here. So I'm going to fix that. So I'm going to go back to the water layer and go back to hide. Okay, so when you do water, you do not want to pull in the edge of the water, meaning where it meets the land or the wall. So what I want to do is go back in here and redraw that. So I'm going to just draw a square right here, and hopefully I don't screw it up. Well, thank God I wasn't on the right mode. So I'm on the water layer. I am on reveal area, and now I'm going to re-reveal this area, if that makes sense. There we go. The only problem is that it's the same layer as the lava. So if I adjust this, it's going to also adjust the lava. I'm okay with that because I think the water looks really goofy like that. So I will turn this down. That looks a lot better. It also kind of toned down this fire, so that's good. All right, so we're good. So that sort of shows, creative usages of your tool. If I go back into play mode, yeah, it looks like water. Yep. And you see I didn't draw all the way to the edge because it pulls in the graphics from the walls and such. You don't want that. So that's just a heads up on those type of effects. So that's most of the different aspects of this particular tool. And if I want to use a door as a player, you shouldn't be able to move through the wall. I'm the game master, so I can move through. But as you can see, if the line of sight is set up, if I open the door and I move in, it'll start showing the different layers in here. It'll start showing the actual light in the room, just like the hallway. Yep. So that's basically your line of sight. And then if you want to lock the door, you shift and click the door. So now when you mouse over, you'll see a little lock on it. And to get rid of it, you just shift click again. And then your players will have access to open it. Okay, so I think I'm good. I've been rambling for a good hour or so. Any questions or anything? I don't want to go too much further, but I think that this gives you a rough idea of the necessity or the reason to play with the tool, so you understand how this works. I really liked having Carl here and Moepsii, the map maker, and the rest of you. I think it's important that we come together like this and figure this stuff out together. Carl obviously has a lot of practice with it. He helped design it and he built it. Moepsii is a map designer, so to have him here gives him a better perspective on how he might want to change or create his maps. And then it gives me, as a community member, the chance to practice and to show others what I'm learning. And it gives everyone else that same chance to take a look at it. So it's a good thing. This is what this community is about. These are the sorts of things that we want to do together. And there's no secrets or, oh, I'm learning this and you guys aren't going to learn it. Nothing like that. We're not gatekeepers. We want everyone to understand how to use this tool, because the more we use it, the better it's going to be, the more refined it's going to get. Like I said, I complained about a couple things, and I think that with enough time, those little gifts will come. But it's just a matter of the community using the product, and that's what we're trying to do is to actually use it, find out all the bugs or the things we do and don't like, get that stuff straightened out. Because even though we're out of beta or out of the test, we still have a ways to go on fine-tuning things. So it's up to us to find these things, because not everybody uses the tool the same way. Yeah, we sure can do more together, and that's the idea. That's why I made this community, because I really think that people get isolated in their creative process or in their games and such, and it really doesn't allow you to grow too much. You just kind of get stuck in the same old bad habits. So by sharing what you do occasionally, you'll get some good criticism and feedback, or maybe you'll know not to spend as much time on certain things. It's just a matter of taste and time. But I want to thank Moepsii for donating the map. It's a really cool map. I'm looking forward to using it someday. And thanks, Carl, for stopping by and making sure I'm not screwing up too bad. And the rest of you, appreciate you showing up. Subscribe to our channel. Join our Fantasy Grounds College Discord. Sign up on the website if you're not already a member. And just take a look at Fantasy Grounds College on Google. That'll take you where you need to go. I also add that to the description later. Once this video is done streaming, I'll edit those things. I'll put Moepsii's link in there. And again, this is just practicing with the tool. So if you guys keep using it, you'll get better. Another thing is Fantasy Grounds College does plan on teaching the map tools, but it's going to be very basic. It's going to be very similar to what I just did. So if you're interested in helping us teach it or refine it or test it, keep showing up and coming around until we release it. But our goal is to have that out by the end of January, that actual official curriculum. Right now, we're kind of play testing it. So Anyhow, nice to see everybody. If you missed a lot of this, you can go back and watch it. This will be in the archive. So again, subscribe to the channel, tell your friends, work on using Unity. Don't be shy. Just go in there and start using it. It's kind of nice to have assets that are already built, but you can use other maps, obviously. I use Moepsii because he just happened to be around, and I bothered him about using it. So he said, yeah, go ahead. So this is a way for him to show his work too. All right, so I'm going to get going. I'll talk to you guys later. Happy gaming. Goodbye.